What's going on there, YouTube, and welcome back to another comic book video. Okay, guys, so we are basically going to continue our coverage over Final Crisis, where we actually pick up with Final Crisis number 2. Now, the reason why we're only covering one chapter in this video is because right after Final Crisis number 2, there was another story I want to cover that takes place between Final Crisis number 2 and Final Crisis number 3, and that storyline is called Rogue's Revenge. And of course, it's all about the bad guys from the Flash comic books. Now, with all that being said, it is a great storyline, and we're going to cover that storyline in another video. Now, with that being said, though, when it comes to Final Crisis number 2, it does do a lot more build-up, but of course, it does bring in a whole lot more characters for this entire storyline that could play a role down the road in later chapters as we go through Final Crisis. And with that being said, here is Final Crisis number 2. Now, to begin today's video, we actually pick up with the Super Young team in Tokyo. Yes, the Super Young team is basically a team that works out of Tokyo. Now, with that being said, though, right now they're out in a club that was made for meta-humans. But while being out in the club, they're watching an interview happening live on TV. And of course, the person who's doing the interview is a guy known as the Rising Sun. Now, this is basically a character who was a hero back in the early days of DC Comics who actually did work out in Tokyo as well. But the problem is, though, Rising Sun feels like the new heroes are not really heroes. They're just heroes who are out there for fame. They're not out there to actually protect people. And so it's the Rising Sun saying that basically the new generation of heroes are just trash. They're not good. They're worthless. They're not actually heroes. And he has no idea why the world cares so much about them. Now, that is the moment in the nightclub we actually see a character appear, and that character is Sonny Somo. Now, Sonny Somo is an old character. I mean, Grant Morrison is going back to the 1980s. But basically, Sonny Somo was a character who was found by a group of people known as the Forever People who were trying to unlock the anti-life equation. So let me explain. The anti-life equation is what Darkseid has been wanting his entire life. And basically, if he's able to actually solve that equation, then he'll be able to actually force people to do whatever he wants them to do. Now, with all that being said, Darkseid still has not really been able to unlock the anti-life equation. But when it comes to Sonny Somo, he was a character who kind of had piece of the anti-life equation. And so the Forever People, the group that found him, was using a mother box to hopefully unlock his piece of the equation. And the reason why he's so important for this storyline, because again, Darkseid wants the anti-life equation. And basically, Sonny Somo could have piece of the equation. Now, of course, right now in the club, he is minding his business, but of course, he's attacked by some random super villain, and you have Somo just take out this villain's heart. Literally takes out his heart and puts it in a cup in the club and goes into the bathroom. Now, while in the bathroom, you do have Sonny kind of, fixing his shirt, fixing his skin, because he did fight against that super villain in the middle of the nightclub. So he was not really wanting to fight in the club. So now he looks like a mess. But while being in the bathroom, of course, he is confronted by a character known as Mr. Miracle. Now, this is Mr. Miracle right now just being a regular human. But of course, it's him right now trying to recruit a new team to kind of help him fight against evil. Because what he tells Sonny is that basically right now there was a war between New Genesis and Apocalypse. And of course, Apocalypse won, evil won. And so it's him saying right now, evil is about to attack the earth. And I'm trying to put together a team to kind of stop that from happening. And so it's him right now recruiting Sonny to hopefully join his new team. Now, that is the moment where we basically pick up with a character known as Nix Uotan. And I really hope I pronounced that last name correctly. But basically, Nix Uotan was a character that we actually met in Final Crisis number 1 at the very tail end of that video. But in reality, though, we actually met him twice. And what I mean is that, remember, guys, there was a moment where you had a monitor who was basically put on trial. And he was basically put on trial because each monitor is responsible to watch over an Earth in a different universe across the multiverse. But when it came to Nix, his Earth and his universe that he was supposed to watch basically got destroyed. And so, of course, there was a trial and he was exiled as a monitor. And of course, he was given a new life as a human, but on New Earth, the main DC universe. And so right now, he's basically a regular human being. But the thing is, though, he remembers pieces of the trial. And that right there should not be happening. But of course, he does. But he's going around and telling everybody at his job about the trial he had, and of course, how bad things are going to come very soon. Now, that is the moment where we actually do pick up with a character known as Dan Turpin. Now, remember, Dan Turpin is basically a detective from Metropolis who's right now working on a case looking for a group of missing children. Now, with all that being said, right now you have Dan Turpin beating up on the Mad Hatter, an old Batman villain. Now, here's the thing, though. So the last time we saw Dan Turpin back in Final Crisis number 1, he actually found a club that was called the Dark Side Club that was being run by Darkseid. Because remember, with the War of the Gods, a lot of gods died, but they came back to life as humans, and Darkseid was one of them. Now, with that being said, Darkseid basically took over a club and named it the Dark Side Club. And on top of that, he had the kids there at the club. Now, of course, when we saw those kids, they were basically being controlled by Darkseid, and it looked like he was able to use the anti-life equation on them. Now, with that being said, Dan Turpin found those kids, but when we jump over to Final Crisis number 2, he's still looking for those kids. And on top of that, he's attacking the Mad Hatter, hoping to find some kind of information that could lead him to the missing kids. And so you have the Mad Hatter tell Dan Turpin, you have to go to Bloodhaven. Go to Bloodhaven. Now, the next page basically reminds us that right now, the Martian Manhunter is dead. Now, of course, he died back in like Final Crisis number 1. Well, really, he died in Final Crisis Requiem. But either way, though, he's dead now. And of course, with the death of the Martian Manhunter, it was a huge blow to the superhero community because he was a character a lot of people looked up to. They really cared for the Martian Manhunter. He did a lot of good things for a lot of different people. And so with his death, it's kind of like a huge blow to the entire superhero community, a huge blow. And of course, you have a lot of characters who are going to miss him very much. But of course, this shows that the villains, the bad guys, they're no longer playing around. They're coming for the big name heroes, and they came for the Martian Manhunter first. Now, we do pick up with Libra and his group of villains that he's trying to recruit for his new group of villains. Because right now, Libra is the new main bad guy of the books so far. And basically, Libra was a character who came out years ago in DC Comics where he basically made the Injustice Gang. Now, with that being said, though, he disappeared for a very long time. But now he's back. Now, with that being said, it's Libra saying that right now he wants to have the world to be perfectly balanced. That's his whole entire thing, that he wants the entire world to be perfectly balanced. But with the heroes always winning, the world is not perfectly balanced. And so right now, basically, you kind of have him going out of his way to kind of make this perfectly balanced world. And so that's why he killed off the Martian Manhunter. But he's trying to recruit other heroes to his gang. But the problem is, though, these are some A-list characters who of course fight against some A-list heroes like Lex Luthor. And so right now it's him saying, hey, Lex, join my crew, join my side, and I can show you great things to come. And so it's Lex telling Libra, if you want me to join your side, you have to hurt or kill Superman. Now, that is the moment where we actually do pick up with the Justice League. And remember, we are now getting reminded about the death of Orion. Orion is a new god who basically died. He crashed on the earth. And of course, with his death, a lot of heroes are wondering what in the world was able to actually kill a god, because usually to kill a god, you have to be a god. And so you have the League right now trying to figure out how in the world did this happen? Now, with that being said, though, of course, with the death of a god, you did have John Stewart alert the Guardians of the Galaxy, or the universe, really, and you had the Guardians basically send out an Alpha Lantern. Now, an Alpha Lantern is kind of like a top-notch Green Lantern. And of course, this Alpha Lantern is here to kind of do some detective work to investigate and figure out how in the world did this god die? Who killed Orion, and how in the world did they kill Orion? Now, of course, when this Alpha Lantern appeared, this Alpha Lantern is a complete jerk. Like, basically, she does not want to really work with the League. She feels like that basically she's an Alpha Lantern, that she'll be able to actually solve this entire case by herself. Now, we do pick up with John Stewart, and right now you have John Stewart kind of investigating basically the scene of the crime where Orion had crashed at. Now, remember, John Stewart is another Green Lantern of Earth. By this point in DC Comics, you only had 4. You had Hal Jordan, John Stewart, Guy Gardner, and Kyle Rayner, and that was it, those 4. The new 3 have not shown up yet. Now, with that being said, right now, you have John Stewart kind of investigating the scene of the crime. But while his partner, Green Lantern, fly away, well, that is the moment he is actually attacked by another Green Lantern. Now, of course, we have no idea who is this other Green Lantern, but while being attacked by this Green Lantern, of course, we're left to believe it had to be someone very close to John Stewart, because at first he did let his guard down, because he was kind of like, I know you, I can trust you. But once the attack had begun, John Stewart realized something's up, something is wrong. And then, of course, John Stewart is taken out. He's not killed, but he is taken out. And so, of course, with John Stewart being attacked, you do have the Alpha Lanterns go right over to Hal Jordan. And the reason why, because at this point in DC Comics, they were the only 2 Green Lanterns of Earth on Earth. Guy Gardner and Kyle Rayner are not on Earth at the moment. And so, of course, the Alpha Lanterns look at Hal and John as partners. And so, of course, with John being attacked, they believe the only person who had attacked John had to be Hal Jordan. Now, with the arrest of Hal Jordan by the Alpha Lanterns, you do have Batman go over to Superman like, hey, you cannot believe that Alpha Lanterns is speaking the truth, that basically Hal did hurt John, because there is no way. But of course, it is Superman saying we have to wait and let the Alpha Lanterns work, because right now they all believe that basically it was Hal. And on top of that, it is Green Lantern business that's bigger than all of us. Now, right after you have Superman leave, you do have Batman go and confront the Alpha Lantern. Now, of course, right after he does that, something is wrong with her. Something is off with her. And so that's the moment you have Batman look right into her hand, and he sees a scar that was made by John Stewart, because John Stewart in that fight was able to get at least one punch off. But of course, that punch was stopped by a hand, but his ring did cause damage to that person's hand, and that person was this Alpha Lantern, Kraken. And so, of course, it's Batman realizing, oh my gosh, something is wrong with her. She possibly attacked John Stewart. And so, of course, you do have Batman begin asking her what in the world is going on. But that is the moment she basically takes out Batman, knocks him out. And she says that someone has been talking to her in her mind. And that is the moment you have a boom tube open up. And with this boom tube, we're left to believe that maybe this Alpha Lantern is also working for Darkseid, because now you have her say she's going to take Batman to be a new plaything for the granny. Now, that is the moment where we basically do pick up with Dan Turbin. Now, right now, you have Dan Turbin going to an old military base. And the reason why, because, of course, all his clues led him to this military base in Bloodhaven. Now, when he gets there, he is confronted by Reverend Godfrey. Now, Reverend Godfrey is basically telling Dan Turbin about what this base has become. It has become a base known as the Evil Factory. And the reason why, because basically a lot of different characters in this factory are just new gods who are coming back to life in a different way. But of course, right now, this Evil Factory is splicing human and animal DNA to kind of bring back the son of Darkseid, which is Kalibak. Now, with all that being said, Reverend Godfrey is a new god as well, who came back to life as a human. But of course, his character is not that important for us to sit down and discuss. But you do have Godfrey tell Dan Turbin, like, yes, we're using the Evil Factory as a way to bring back the son of Darkseid. But then you have Godfrey say, no, I mean your son, Kalibak. We are bringing him back to life. Now, for Dan Turbin, he's very confused because Kalibak is not his son. And his actual son in real life died years ago. And so for Dan, he's kind of like, what do you mean, my son? Bringing my son Kalibak back to life. Kalibak is Darkseid's son. And that is the moment he realized that basically the spirit of Darkseid is in his body now. Because remember, back in Final Crisis #1, Darkseid did tell Dan Turbin that basically he had been having a hard time kind of keeping a body alive for a good period of time, that the bodies just die out. And so the spirit of Darkseid has to constantly find a new body to use over and over again. And so Darkseid is right now using Dan Turbin's body. And so sooner or later, Dan Turbin could possibly turn into Darkseid. Now, that is the moment we do actually jump over to Superman, Lois Lane, Perry White, and also Jimmy Olsen. Now, remember earlier that Libra did say that he was going to hurt Superman as a way to kind of have Lex Luthor join his new Injustice gang. And so right now, you basically have Superman right now at work at the Daily Planet with his wife, Lois Lane, Perry White, and Jimmy Olsen. But then you have Clark Kent realize that something was wrong with Jimmy Olsen, because as soon as Jimmy got inside the elevator to leave, Jimmy turned into Clayface, which of course told Superman something's up. What's about to happen here in this building? But before he's actually able to react, the entire building blows up. Now, of course, Perry White is okay, but the one person who's not okay is, of course, Lois Lane. So remember, Libra was asked by Lex Luthor to say, if you want me to join your crew, you have to hurt Superman. And the one way to hurt him is to go after the person he loves the most, Lois Lane. And so when that bomb exploded, it basically hurt Lois Lane. Now, that is the moment we actually do pick up with Wally West and Jay Garrett, the two Flashes. Now, remember, by this point in DC Comics, Barry Allen was dead. He was still dead and been dead for almost 20 years. And so, of course, it was Wally West being the current Flash and Jay kind of like the mentor on the sideline. But either way, though, right now they were tasked to hopefully figure out where the Martian Manhunter was killed at. Now, you do have Wally and Jay find a location where they do find a lot of blood that belonged to the Martian Manhunter. They do find a book as well, but they also find Morbius' chair. Now, the chair is very important because remember, back in Final Crisis #1, Libra did send out a couple bad guys to get the chair. So the question is now, why did Libra leave the chair here for? But that is the moment you have Wally say, I think I know what killed Orion. What if a bullet that was made of radion, which radion is the kind of, not the only way, but the main way to kind of kill a new god. But you have Wally say, what if a bullet that was made of radion was sent back in time to basically kill Orion? Now, of course, as you have Wally saying that, the Morbius chair opens up a boom tube. And with this boom tube, you have a radion bullet just kind of flying by. But you also have the Black Racer, which of course in some parts of DC Comics represents death, also zooming by. But you have a third person also zooming by as well. And that third person is Barry Allen, and he is alive. And this is huge because he died back in Crisis of Infinite Earth way back in 1986. So here we are 20 years later in like 2006 or 8. I forgot what year Final Crisis came out, but either way, now we know Barry Allen is alive, and right now he is trying to stop the bullet that's made of radion that's going back in time, but he's being chased by the Black Racer. But this is where we are going to end today's comic book video. So please leave me a like down below and subscribe. But guys, I'll see y'all next time. Later.